onto a whiteboard. Now I want to look at the ossification of the various bones of the upper leg. So we begin with the humerus. Now we know the humerus is a long bone, and therefore we undergo endochondral ossification. Now the humerus has what we call 8 centers of ossification. 1 primary center at the diaphysis and 7 secondary centers at the epiphysis. So I'm sketching it. Let me make it a bit short. So this is the humerus sketch section. You notice proximally we have the head, we have the greater tubercle, we have the lesser tubercle. There's the shaft. Now the shaft, there is 1 primary center of ossification. 1 primary center. And this ossification center appears around the 8th week of intrauterine life. And proximally, the head, you just remember that HGL, H for the head, G for greater tubercle, and L for lesser tubercle. There is 1 secondary ossification center located in the head, 1 in the greater tubercle, and then 1 in the lesser tubercle. Now for the head, it appears in the first year of postnatal life. The greater tubercle appears in the 3rd year, with the lesser tubercle appearing around the 5th year of postnatal life. Now these, after appearing these years, by the 6th to 7th year of postnatal life, they get fused with the rest of the shafts of the humerus. Now, when we get to the distal aspect, there are 4 centers of ossification. And because when we take radiograph of the elbow, we don't just take the distal aspect of the humerus, we get to also take into consideration the proximal aspect of the ulna and radius. We would like to include that of the proximal aspect of the ulna, and then the radius. So there is a mnemonic, radiography people are really comfortable with this mnemonic. CRI2. And C is for capitulum, R for radial head, I for internal epicondyle. Now when we say internal epicondyle, we are looking at the medial epicondyle. T for trochlea, O for olecranon, or you can call it the olecranon process, and E for external epicondyle. The external epicondyle is actually the lateral epicondyle. Now, for these centers, it's just a matter of a game of odd numbers. Capitulum appears during the 1st year of postnatal life, radial head 3rd year, so 5th, 7th, 9th, and 11th years respectively. So we have capitulum, so there's 1 ossification center in the capitulum, and that one appears around the 1st year of postnatal life. Now the next one is radial head, the head of radius. That one appears around the 3rd year of postnatal life. Now next one is medial epicondyle, and that's the medial, that's the more prominent one. There is 1 center of ossification which appears around the 5th year of postnatal life. Then we also have the trochlea, the pulley-shaped, modified condyle of the humerus. That one appears, around the 7th year of postnatal life. Olecranon, and we know olecranon is located at the posterior aspect of the elbow, is a very prominent posterior part of the ulna, and that olecranon, its secondary ossification center, appears around the 9th year of postnatal life. And then for the lateral epicondyle, that one appears around the 11th year of postnatal life. Now, all these secondary ossification centers, since we are dealing with that of the radius, and so we look at the ossification center at the medial epicondyle, that at the lateral epicondyle, that at the trochlea, and that at the capitulum. The rest we'll look at it later. All these ones fuse with the rest of the shaft of the humerus by the 16th to 17th year of postnatal life. Now, one thing is that, why are we interested in these ossification centers? One may ask. One thing that is important is that it helps in radiography to help estimate age of individuals. And for instance, if an individual's medial epicondyle appears in radiography, but we don't see the lateral epicondyle, then we know the person is less than 11 years, but will be around 5 years or so, but will be less than 11 years. So this has to do with the ossification centers of the humerus. We've seen that it has 8 centers of ossification, 1 primary center, and then we have 3 at the proximal end, and then 4 at the distal end. And for you to know the distal end, you include that of the radial and ulnar proximal aspects, because in radiography you look at all these things using the mnemonic crito, and it's a game of odd numbers in that order. Now, those distal aspects, ossification centers, secondary ossification centers, will fuse around the 16th to 17th year of postnatal life. Alright, so we want to look at the ossification of the radius and ulna. For the radius and ulna, the radius, has its head. Well, there will be the olecranon with the coronary processes proximally. So what we find is that, just by way of remembering, you just have to know that with the ossification of radius and ulna, it moves from the distal end to the proximal end of the radius, then comes back to the distal end of ulna, into the proximal end of ulna. So what we will see is that the first ossification center to appear, apart from the primary ossification centers of both radius and ulna, appearing around the 8th week of intrauterine life. What happens is that for the secondary centers, it begins at the distal end of the radius. So, around the first year, first to second, to 2 years, 1 to 2 years it appears, and then it goes to the proximal end, and that's around the 3rd year, which you've already seen with the mnemonic crito. And then it comes back to the distal end, the head of the ulna, and that one appears around the 6th year of postnatal life, and obviously one at the proximal end of the ulna, and that one appears around the 9th year of postnatal life. So these are the ossification centers which we appreciate as regards the ulna and radius. Now, one thing is that for the time that the proximal end of the ulna of the radius fuses with the rest of the shaft, it takes place around the 12th year of postnatal life. But for the proximal end of the ulna, it happens around the 18th year of postnatal life. But for the distal aspect of the bone, of these two bones, each of them fuses with their respective shafts by the age of 20. So by the 20th year of postnatal life, each one, distal, where the secondary ossification centers will fuse with the rest of the shafts of their respective bones. Now, therefore tells me that if the distal ends, which is the last to get ossified or get fused, then it means that the bones have what you call their nutrient foramina proximally, because there's an inverse relationship between the growing end of bone and the nutrient foramina of bones. So if the nutrient foramina are proximally placed, it means that the growing end of the bone will be distal, and that is why it was the last to get fused with the rest of the shaft. All right. Now we move on to the ossification centers as regards the carpal bones. Now, for the carpal bones, what we know is that we have 8 bones, 4 in each row. So we remember some lovers take positions that they can't handle. If you remember this mnemonic, there's trapezium, there's trapezoid, just by way of memory. What you have to know is that at the distal aspect, the largest carpal bone is the capitate. Now, just get the capitate and we move anti-clockwise in an anti-clockwise manner. If you go this way, leaving out the pisiform, then what happens is that the carpal bone, which the capitate, the largest bone, that's where ossification begins. And this one, ossification fuses by the age, of 2nd month. Of course, intrauterine life. And for gametes, by the age, of 3rd month of intrauterine life. Now for trochlea, it gets fused, its ossification, it's ossified by the age of, there's a third year. This is 3rd year of postnatal life. Now the remaining bones, lunate, scaphoid, trapezium, and trapezoid, they will ossify in this manner. Although there could be variations with these numbers, but generally they will get ossified by the age of 5th to 6th week of 6th to 5th year of postnatal life. Now for the pisiform is actually a sesamoid bone and is the last to ossify, and it gets ossified by the age of 9th to 12th year, of course, of postnatal life. Okay, so that's the ossification thing that we looked at. Now, for the bones of the metacarpals, we've seen that the first metacarpal, which is, at the base of the thumb, that one is the shortest and the stoutest, very strong, and it does not really articulate with the other metacarpal bones. Now, what we find is that, yes, we've said that it bears more of the characteristics of a phalanx than a metacarpal. So let's see. Now, for the first metacarpal, so metacarpal 1, assuming this, let's just sketch out this. it will have a proximal base, and let's say this is metacarpal 1 up to metacarpal 5. So let's say this, but we got to know that the functional epiphysis of metacarpal 1 is at its base, but the remaining metacarpals, they are located at the head. Now, for the primary centers of ossification, both of them appear, around the 9th week of intrauterine life, irrespective of whether it's metacarpal 1 up to 5. It will appear around the 9th week of intrauterine life. Now, for the fusion, for that of the epiphysis, what happens is that for the metacarpal 1, it appears around the 18th year of postnatal life. Then for the head, for the rest of the metacarpals, that one will get fused around, the 16th year of postnatal life. So, in fact, that's why we're saying that it's very odd, having its, secondary ossification center rather at the base and not at the head. Now, for the phalanges, which is the last ossification that we look at, phalanges, we have what we call proximal phalanx. So let's say this is the base. We have what we call intermediate or middle phalanx, and then we have what we call distal phalanx. Remember, these are the bases. So because they are bases, that's where they are epiphysis, functional epiphysis, because that's where we have the secondary ossification centers. Now, for their primary ossification centers, which appear in the shaft, for the proximal epiphysis, that one appears around, the 12th week of intrauterine life. Now, for the middle, it appears around the 10th week of intrauterine life, and then for the distal, it appears, around the 8th week of intrauterine life. So that is really, a little bit surprising to find it this way. This one is rather the 12th week, the middle, the 12th week. And then we have the 10th week for the proximal. So proximal 10th week, distal 8th week, intermediate around the 12th week. Now, for their secondary centers, all of them, their secondary centers will get fused. The remaining part of the shaft, will appear infused around, the 2nd year of postnatal life. So there's a short video on the ossification of the bones of the upper limb. Thank you.